Police hear "Wretched Cry" from an abandoned house, and what they find is heartbreaking. When police heard shrieks that sounded like someone was in pain, they had to cross the threshold of the creepiest house they had ever seen. They didn't know what was inside, but it was their job to investigate. After police heard wretched cries from inside that abandoned house, what they found was heart-wrenching. Before we get into the video, you can hear us cry for joy by clicking that like button, and be sure to subscribe if you've not already done so and click the notification bell. That way you'll be sure to see all of our future videos. The incident occurred late at night, July 6, 2015. Officers from the Chicago Police Department went to the door of what they thought was a haunted house. The house itself was creepy enough, and the strange sounds made it even scarier. The officers were cautious when they went inside to investigate. The officers couldn't tell what they were hearing. As they got closer to the door, they realized that they were hearing screams. It sounded as though someone was in torment. They turned on their flashlights and tried to find the source of the screaming. When the officers did find the source, they hadn't discovered a ghost, and it wasn't even human. In fact, it was two dogs. It didn't take long for the officers to see that the dogs were not doing well. They were near death because of starvation, and it appeared that they had been in this abandoned house for a very long time. The dogs were so thin that they were basically just skin and bones. The officers called the Trio Animal Foundation, or TAF, and they took the dogs to a local vet. Fortunately, the officers found an animal hospital that was still open. They got lucky because it was 1 in the morning. The TAF staff met the officers there to see the dogs. When the staff members met the dogs, they named the female Emmy and the male Oscar. The officers left the animals in the care of these professionals, who would pay for their care and try to nurse the dogs back to health. The officers contacted the Trio Animal Foundation because of all the good work that they do. They are a charitable organization that assists, rescues, and shelters animals, and individuals pay the medical bills of homeless pets. They also arrange pet adoptions and responsible pet ownership, such as spaying and neutering. Since Oscar and Emmy were so ill, they needed their help. Emmy was severely underweight. She weighed only 24 pounds when she was brought to the vet. She should have weighed twice that. Her blood work showed that her poor little body was in starvation mode and that she was anemic. Sadly, Amir was the healthier of the two dogs. Oscar was in even worse shape. His body was also in starvation mode, and he was also suffering from hypophosphatemia. This meant that he was dangerously close to going into liver failure. After the dogs' examinations, it was decided that if they were going to survive, they would need to fight very hard for several days. The dogs had gone so long without food, and on to that, the vet feared that they would react poorly when given food and nutrients. To keep the dogs from getting worse while feeding them, the staff caring for them had to put them on a very special feeding regimen. According to TAF, Emmy started out on 4 fluids and was given several small meals each day. Since she was so thin and her system was depleted, they had to be careful about what they fed her. And the same was true of Oscar. They had to be fed this way to keep them from developing refeeding syndrome. If that were to happen, it could overwhelm the dog's starved systems, resulting in organ failure, even death. The way to prevent this condition was to eat many meals during the day that were all high in fat. Although Amy was still thin, she began doing better than Oscar. Her condition was stabilizing, and she was becoming more aware of her surroundings. She was also able to finally start keeping food down. Sadly, Oscar was still struggling. He was being treated with medication and electrolyte supplements. Fortunately, though, he did begin to recover himself. In less than a month, the dogs gained weight and were happy and healthy again. Emmy fell in love with the vet tech named Anthony, and he fell in love with her and he took her in. Oscar struggled a bit more due to the trauma that he still felt. Fortunately, he was prescribed emotional and behavioral therapy, and he was finally adopted as well. He even got a new canine sister in the process. Subscribe for more.